what people get wrong regarding migration. Today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
One of the most controversial issues worldwide on politics, geopolitics, economics, and so on is migration. And this is a topic that many people have an opinion, but very few are well informed. And I know this is not an easy topic regarding who has the right, who doesn't have the right to migrate legally, illegally to another country. And of course, it's not a given right to migrate to one country to another. However, the legislation regarding migration, of course, each country has their own migration policies. Well, is awful, is dreadful, and that's why we see all of this situation, this turmoil, social, economically, all over the world. However, what most people don't realize is that migration is actually a positive thing. Many people move all over the world, and of course, sometimes happens is just everyone runs through one particular country or at any given time. For instance, what happened on the war in Ukraine, that many Ukrainians just ran to the European Union and other countries, and that was a particularly difficult situation. However, it has a lot of points, and today we want to discuss just a little bit this topic and things that people get wrong about migration. The first thing is migration is a net positive for the country that receives, of course, the migrants, and it's a net negative for people, for the nation that lose the migrants. And we know that in Venezuela, we had around 7 million migrants on the past few years, and that has been bad for the economy, actually. You have to know that every migrant, of course, you have a few bad people, but most of them, over 90% of the migrants, they provide value to the economy. And the thing is, why many people are very ignorant and very, anti-migration, it's because they only read on the news, the quote-unquote survivorship bias. In this case, a negative survivorship bias is that they saw on the news the migrant that committed a crime or made a robbery or something like that. Most migrants, first, you have to know that they provide value because they are already educated. And in any given country, when you have someone, of course, a kid, that kid has to be provided with education, healthcare, and so on until he's around 18 years old. And now this particular person can pass to be part of the working labor force, the working population. But with migrants, you have a turnkey individual that already has a particular skill of communication, of working, and so on, physical labor, and they can be joining the labor force. And this particular individual, this particular migrant, already is going to be taxed, so it's going to contribute to the tax revenue system of the receiving country. Also, this person is a consumer on a particular economy, so they demand food, shelter, healthcare, education, so on and so on. So this particular person has to consume. And remember, economics 101, when you have more transactions, you have more GDP, and hence you have more wealth. Number two is that migration provides demand for goods and services, leisure and hospitality, of course, the basic necessities, shelter, healthcare, education, so on and so on. So when you have more people on an economy, you have more people making business, making transactions, selling their labor, and after that, taking their income in order to consume goods and services. Many people think that the world is overpopulated, and that's not the case. On economics, I'm not going to get on the climate change thing, so on. But in economics, you have more people consuming, people that are active members of the workforce, of the population, and that's good for the economy. And many people think that, they have this scarcity mindset, especially the less educated, the less skillful people don't know this. And one of the things, actually, one of the many negative comments that I get from migration is that, and this comes from the USA, that many people say, no, the US is overpopulated. I mean, not the case. The US has a population around 330 million people and is amongst the wealthy countries, quote unquote, is the most populated. But however, China has 1.4 billion people, so weighs 4 or 5 times more than that. And actually, they were able, on the past couple of decades, to pull out 800 million people from poverty, and right now they are middle class, or what can be considered middle class in China. Same thing in India. The same process is happening right now in India. And that's why, for the most educated economies, India is going to surpass China regarding GDP because they are going to be on this uphill trend that first China had in the past couple of decades. Right now, India is on a similar process, and hence you're going to have more economic growth, more GDP overall. Actually, you can accommodate if overpopulation is something that you're worrying, let's say in the United States, and you can accommodate every citizen of the world, roughly 8 billion people. You can accommodate these 8 billion people in the state of Texas with actually comfortable population density. So it's not that. Usually it's more personal bias that many people have regarding migrants and migration and so on. And of course, that also important to consider. But I mean, most of the issues regarding migration and the negative things about migration is just people that are, let's be honest, people that are racist, xenophobic, and poorly educated. And one of the most important things regarding migrants is entrepreneurship. Many studies have been conducted that migrants are 3 times more likely to become entrepreneurs compared to the domestic citizen, the born and raised citizen in this particular country. Well, is that because being an entrepreneur is, you have to be a risk taker in order to be an entrepreneur, of course. Migrants are more prone to be risk takers compared to the local population. They usually is more comfortable on a particular country than the average migrant. So the average migrant is more prone to start a home business, a local business, a small business, and with a good work ethic that most migrants have, because they have to work extra hard in order to make ends meet on a new country. That this is something that the local population don't realize, is that when you are from the local population, you always have a network of people or friends, people that you went to high school or college, friends, cousins, of course, family, the large family that you have over there. They can help you out, maybe get a job, maybe do some favor and so on. That adds up. Meanwhile, the average migrant doesn't have their family, anything like that. It has a very tiny and unimportant network, so they have to work extra hard in order to make ends meet, so they have to be more resourceful. And hence, that's why you see you see more entrepreneurship amongst the migrant population at any even country. And the best example that I can use is Silicon Valley. Over 50% of the founders and members and from the startups and these big important companies in Silicon Valley, 52% of them are either migrants or sons of migrants. So, of course, now talking about Silicon Valley, you can say no more. I mean, migrants are good for entrepreneurship. Probably the most important thing regarding migrants is the competition that help on their particular country. The best example is United States. United States has been probably the most successful civilization all over the world. You can argue differently right now. By the way, I'm very pro United States. So, in case you want to know. Anyway, so one of the things that make United States special is how people from all over the world blend together and created a bunch of industries, cultures, services, and so on and so on. And that projection to the rest of the world is one of the things, probably the main thing that makes the United States attractive, because they don't have a very homogeneous culture. They have a bunch of culture from many different nations, starting by the British, the people who colonized the United States, in the beginning, but also people from Italy, people from Mexico, people from China, Japan, the rest of Latin America, of course, the rest of Europe, Africa, and so on and so on. Of course, there have been many hiccups all over the way, and combined, of course, with the native population of the United States, the Indians, the Aborigines, the First Nation, the people, the First Nation, and that had created a lot of good things, of course, some bad things on the way, but it's one of the things that make United States great. On the other hand, we have the communities and the nations that have been not successful regarding migration, and hence they have been not successful regarding economics and so on. And you have dreadful cases, for instance, the Japan case. And if you're an economics geek like myself, you know the case of Japan. It has a very interesting story. Japan has the best story regarding migration and the failure of their embrace the change of migration. The Japanese culture is very hermetic and homogeneous, and that created a very difficult situation that we're living today. On the 80s, Japan was poised to overthrow the United States on GDP, so become the biggest economic superpower on the world. And actually was a cold shot, just like right now with China, that is quote-unquote poised to overthrow the United States regarding the number one GDP all over the world. Well, on the 80s, Japan, of course, spectacular companies, Sony, Toyota, and so on. And Japan, actually, a lot of wealth creation happened in Japan during 3 decades until the 80s. What happened afterwards is that Japan got stagnated regarding GDP and has basically the same GDP since the early 90s, and has grown a little bit. Actually, thanks mostly to their late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, that he was from migration. What happened is Japan, and of course there are a lot of things that happen in Japan on this period where they didn't saw economic growth, is that one of the things is migration, because the people got old, they don't have competition because they only have Japanese people, don't have other ideas, other mindsets, other nuances that they can mingle and become competitive for the rest of the world. So Japan got stagnated, less entrepreneurship. The average Japanese is one of the citizens of the world that is less prone to be an entrepreneur. There are stories about it. And what happened is Japanese people don't like migration. And by the other thing is that people from the rest of the world don't want to migrate to Japan. Even people from poor countries, because they don't like the Japanese culture, they don't like the language, and so on, so on. So Japanese people don't want migrants, and migrants, most of them, don't want to be in Japan. So it's a lose-lose situation. Meanwhile, the United States keep growing and growing and growing the next decades after the 90s. Meanwhile, Japan got stagnated because the United States is quote-unquote open to migration, quote-unquote, and Japan isn't, so, okay, it got stagnated. Other dreadful case, and this is more recent, is with Brexit. Many people would argue that Brexit was not due to racism and xenophobia, and it's actually about racism and xenophobia. Here's why. The UK was part of the European Union. And what happened is that, of course, when you are a member of the European Union, and I'm not a particular big fan of the politics on the European Union, so just to clear that out, but I like the idea of the European Union where it's done correctly. Anyways, and there's a lot of bureaucracy and so on. You guys know that I hate bureaucracy, and I know hate is a strong word, but still it's a good deal because you have population over 400 million people with good standards of living, and a lot of mistakes are done every day on the EU. I know that, but people, it has been relatively successful to have this synergy among all of these European states. The United Kingdom was part of that. They can trade freely with the European Union, and of course I know there's some issues with the bureaucracy and so on, but still you have access, basically with no taxes, to the European Union. And what happened is during Brexit, the infamous election that the British have regarding staying in the European Union or leaving the European Union, and of course, the European Union was the winner of that particular election. And after that, they elected Theresa May. At the moment, after the election of the Brexit, she took charge as the British premier. And I remember one of the deals proposed to the EU afterwards is that, okay, let's keep all of the economic things and trade and so on that the UK people, the politicians amongst the Brexit campaign said that no, we don't like to do this business with the EU. So, but one of the proposals was, let's keep everything economic, business-wise, but halt migration. And the EU said, no. If you want our goods and services and trade with us, you also have to take our migrants. I'm talking the people that live in the EU, the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the Germans and so on, that can legally go and migrate to the UK. Same thing with people from the UK that migrate to other states within the EU. So it was racist and xenophobic mostly, and of course this populistic right-wing thing by Nigel Farage and all that kind of thing. But I'm not a leftist, by the way. I have to always mention that as well. Well, anyway, what happened is that, of course, Brexit, after Brexit, when formally was announced during the Boris Johnson regime, Brexit was a done deal. And after that, the British economy got stagnated for COVID and also for Brexit. But right now, have what they want. Not no migrants, but cool nationalistic economy, I presume. And by the way, I love the UK as well, so please take it with a grain of salt. And I know that many people is gonna say that the migrants are criminals and drug dealers and so on, everything that Trump says. Okay, very good. Most of the migrants, actually, the migrant population and any given nation is less prone to commit crimes compared to the local population. And of course, you have criminals everywhere. And the solution is simple. Just apply the law to the migrants just as you apply. So you have a murderer, a local murderer, and you put him in jail for 20 years, something like that. Do the same thing with the migrant. And of course, after that, just deported to their home country. And that's simple. So I don't understand what is some ignorance regarding this issue. And I know this motivation is mostly political. Usually one part of the aisle at any given country, usually the right wing, the extreme right wing, likes to take migrants as scapegoats because they're easy people to blame for the ineptitude of the local bureaucrats and politicians that they don't know anything about migration. And you make difficult in a legal migrant, so hence you're gonna have illegal migrants, So when you blame about illegal migrants, you have to blame is your local politician and your local bureaucrats. And so basically they blame migrants for things that happen for poor economic policies, poor geopolitics, poor bureaucracy. Actually, bureaucracy is poor, and that's one of the things that make countries more poorer. And at the end, it's just the same people to blame. Bureaucrats and politicians. Take that into account.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.